Hello, hello. You know what time it is. Another episode of Lauren's Guide. Today we're going to be talking about acing the Casper. This is a very daunting test from medical students to nursing professionals. I ended up taking the Casper and my scores were sent to McMaster University and Western, both of which I ended up getting accepted from following my grades. So I'm making this video to tell you all about the Casper and some tips and tricks that help me do well. I know it's very stressful and very daunting, but I promise you, if you just give yourself like a week and a half, you'll have enough time, shorter or longer, depending on how comfortable you are in front of the camera, and we'll get right into all of our tips and tricks. Step 1. Give yourself time. I know that sometimes, let's say they have a deadline in like January, right? You'd want to book it the month before. I did my Casper well in advance. You can choose when you book them, so you have a couple different time slots and a couple different months to work with. I think I booked mine about 2 months in advance because if anything went wrong or I didn't want to feel the pressure, and I made sure that I give myself enough time to practice as well as not putting myself right up to the deadline. I'm always extra diligent and I always like to get my test scores in nice and early, so that's my first tip, is to give yourself enough time. Second tip, make use of your resources outside of the books. I use my family and friends a lot. I needed to figure out if my reasoning skills made sense because a lot of the times these reasoning questions are not based on just the one right answer. There's a lot of different answers. So I'm blessed with having family and friends that were open to helping me out, all different backgrounds, engineering, teaching. We've got some other stuff, lawyer. So I made sure to ask them the questions and practice my answers with them beforehand to see, oh, do you have a different idea? And I loved seeing that they had all these different ideas that I could incorporate into my own responses because it gave me a new perspective. So I think that really was a big component in having a very well-rounded answer. Third, very important, you got to get comfortable in front of the camera. I know it's awkward, and sometimes they'll tell you to practice speaking, for example, talk to stuffed animals or your dog, but I think that it is more important to get comfortable speaking to a literal camera. For example, as I'm filming this, I'm just staring at a screen. But this is a very important component because the people on the other end are going to be looking at this expecting to see someone who is comfortable, who communicates clearly, and if you say a lot of buts, you're looking around, you kind of look really fidgety, although I understand you're probably going to be anxious on test day. You need to be as focused as you can and be ready to give the best answers. So maybe give yourself practice questions or simply speak absolutely randomness while staring at your camera, filming yourself. You can also watch it back and say, oh, I looked a bit weird there. I keep fidgeting with my hands, or I don't use my hands enough and I look very uncomfortable. So making sure to be aware of where your head is, your posture, that's very important. This brings me to number 4, act the part. I expect you on test day to have your hair done. You got to be dressed well. You want to have good posture. And also very important, make sure you recognize that they can see your body language. So if you're very closed off and very reserved, they can read that. Versus if you're very open and you use your hands and you have more of an expressive tone. It's very important to act the part every time you go in. Pretend like you're speaking to the test person and not your screen. You want to make sure that you have the good posture, no slouching. Make sure you put on some clothes, don't come in your PJs. Maybe you can wear slippers, but make sure that you feel head to toe confident and ready to go. Number 5, this kind of touches on my last points, use your hands. Your hands are a very powerful tool. It shows expression, it helps emphasize points. For example, if I told you the best way to ace the exam is to practice versus the best way to ace the exam is to practice, you can see that the second point, it stood out a lot more using your hand expressions, and it seems like you're speaking to the reader. Number 6, don't forget professionalism. On the Casper website, you'll see a list of all these different key points to hit. It includes collaboration, empathy, all these different things, communication, but the point that I find people forget most often is professionalism. So while you're giving your answers to these scenarios, which are all very weird, you need to remember that you have to have a very good example of professionalism. What that means is, if you're trying to confront someone or discuss something with them, you want to make sure you explain to pull them aside. You want to pull them aside and maintain their confidentiality. Same thing to respect boundaries. So a lot of the examples you may come up with, you're probably thinking of a family scenario where you can have much more flexible boundaries. You need to remember that this may be in a work setting for some of the examples. So you need to remind yourself to maintain professionalism and express that clearly in your answers. Number 7, identify the vulnerable party. In a lot of these scenarios, you may have someone who's like a friend who is having an issue, or maybe it's someone on the streets, but you need to identify first in your verbal responses who the vulnerable party is. That's important because that allows you to put yourselves in their shoes. A lot of times in the Casper test, they want to understand that you're able to put yourself in a new perspective and understand from their point of view, and you kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. That's a very, very big element. You don't want to assume anything. So for this vulnerable party, if you see, for example, I've seen this in one of my examples, someone stealing something, you need to put yourself in the shoes of the person who was robbing the store, and you need to think they're the vulnerable party, and you can't assume. You can't assume they're doing this for X, Y, and Z reasons. You need to communicate properly with them, and you do not ever assume. That's a very big element I've noticed in a lot of the Casper questions, and I made sure when I was speaking to the camera to identify first, rephrase the question, and then hop right into who the vulnerable party is. There's my dog! I guess she's coming to make an appearance. But yeah, that's all my tips for the Casper test. If you have any more questions or comments, you can ask me down below and I will respond. Otherwise, good luck on your test day. I believe in you. Work with confidence and you'll be good to go. Thanks. Bye, everyone.